It's time for Clemson Sports Talk with Lawton Swan.
Ready, set. Just call me Swanee.
Tiger style. Tiger style.
Finally, Clemson Sports Talk has come back to Drive Time. Hello, everybody. Lawton Swan back in the saddle once again. It is the show that shakes the Southland. Clemson Sports Talk for you each and every afternoon as you make your way around the great state of South Carolina and beyond. Listen to us on fantastic radio stations like Fox Sports Radio 1400 in the Midlands, Sports Radio 100.1 The Fan in Florence, and 920 AM in Manning. Glad to be back with you all here and apologize for last week. We had internet issues at the house. There was a filter on the lines. They got that out. Everything's rocking and rolling, and now we're ready to go with you here for 2 powerful hours full of the show that shakes the Southland. And continuing our series where we have discussed people's lives in sports, we're fortunate enough to be joined today by Mike Mooneyham from the Charleston Post and Courier. Of course, Mike has been a part of the Post and Courier for many, many years, covering wrestling dating back to the 1960s with tremendous experiences in sports. And Mike, welcome in, and we appreciate you joining us. So what are your earliest memories of sports growing up there in Charleston?
I love baseball, football, basketball, all the traditional sports. But it wasn't until 1964, I was 10 years old, that I was introduced to professional wrestling. And I tell you, when I saw my first wrestling show, I was hooked from that point on.
Now, back then, as far as television production of wrestling, was there anything in the Charleston area growing up there, or was it mostly the only way you were going to see this is to go out to the live events?
Well, I just actually stumbled upon it. Me and a couple of my buddies were playing football outside one Saturday afternoon, and I suggested we take a break, went inside for a sandwich, flipped on the old black and white television set, and I saw something I had never seen before. I thought I'd seen all the sports, but this was professional wrestling. And me and my buddies, we were just amazed, watching on this old grainy black and white television. It was like this larger than life presentation. My first show, I heard Bob Caudle. We got the wrestling show out of Raleigh Television. It went around the whole wrestling circuit, and we had a station in Charleston that aired it every Saturday afternoon. And, it wasn't really like a sport, but, it was very athletic. And first laid my eyes on a tag team match. It was 601-pound Haystacks Calhoun and Johnny Weaver against this team of Aldo Bogny and Bronco Lubitsch. They looked like these two foreign menaces. Bogny was from Buenos Aires, Argentina, and Lubitsch was from Belgrade, Yugoslavia, and, really great heels. And they had a manager, this cane-wielding Kentucky colonel named Homer Odell. And, they were sort of scary to me. We were just kids, and here's this guy hitting wrestlers with an old hickory cane, and, just everything. It was just a great show that we had never seen before. And then they plugged a local show for the following week in Charleston at the old county hall. And I suggested to my buddies, I said, look, this is totally different, but we've got to go. So sure enough, I was there that following Friday night. And really, I was, that was it for me. And that was I was back in 1964, and I never looked back.
Mike Mooneyham here on Clemson Sports Talk, giving you a look at his life in sports, which started with a love for wrestling. And, back in those days, 1960s, early 1960s, my dad was working at WBT up in Charlotte, and WBTV's Big Bill Ward is the name my dad always brings up from the older days in wrestling history. Do you have any memories of Big Bill Ward on championship wrestling?
I do. I didn't really know him. I was still young back then, but I do recall, at Charlotte Station having Big Bill Ward. See, our equivalent was Bob Caudle on Raleigh TV. That's the show we got. Big Bill was certainly a name back then. And speaking of Bob Caudle, I called him just a few weeks ago. He's at least 90 years old. And I swear to you, when I talk to him and hear that voice, it's as though I'm 10 years old all over again. He sounds the same, that same voice that hooked me that first Saturday on TV wrestling. It's amazing, but just wonderful memories of wrestling back then. It really was. I mean, wrestling has evolved so much, I guess you can say, over the years. But to me, there's nothing that's going to replace that. My first relationship with pro wrestling back in, say, bland, but it was more